Hello and welcome to the Marx blog. Here with me, Mark Marx. I am a communist, a socialist, and a quasi pseudo anarchist. Which means basically that it's pretty self-explanatory actually. But if you don't know, obviously you can just find out more for yourself. But what is important to know is that I am not just your ordinary run-of-the-mill communist. I am actually the founding member and leader of the Scottish Socialist Part-Time Workers' Party, and we're involved in all kinds of activism. In fact, at our meeting last Friday, both of us agreed that it was time to take matters into our own hands. So we've been going out leafleting, speaking to our proletarian comrades, and generally spreading the communist message. And admittedly, there have been setbacks. In hindsight, it probably was a mistake to read aloud passages from Das Kapital on board the number 2 night bus. However, we were successful in disrupting operations at the Bank of Scotland last week. Our protest meant that we prevented the staff at the Sucky Hall Street branch from performing the work of their capitalist paymasters for nearly 15 minutes before they threatened to call the police. But I can tell you that if it weren't for us, those security guards would have got a whole lot more done. You may be wondering a bit about myself, and while I don't really agree that politics, you should be interested in the people that should be the beliefs that matter, but I'll give you a quick summary. Basically, before I came across the communist literature, I worked at the drive-through window of Burger King, but I soon realised that I was working for an uncaring, faceless corporation. Burger King, they don't even have some kind of Ronald McDonald style figurehead who could be held accountable. I can actually remember my first shift in Burger King after becoming a revolutionary, telling my boss that I felt that the people who flip the burgers should own them. And he replied that still doesn't justify why you took an extra 7 minutes on your lunch break. But I quit there and then, and sure, they will tell you I was about to be sacked anyway, after a disciplinary hearing for repeatedly serving customers without washing my hands. But that just shows you the depths that these corporations are willing to sink in order to avoid being exposed to the truth. Afterwards, I did dabble in academia for a while, studying music, but it soon became clear that my revolutionary lyrics just weren't in sync with the ivory tower ideals of the establishment at Anniesland College. But in the words of Russell Brand, the time of revolution is upon us. I thought it was a fantastic interview he gave with Jeremy Clarkson. It was pretty much just like the Frost-Nixon interview, but the other way around, with the interviewee winning. As Brand rightly pointed out, there is very little difference between the political parties. This is something which doesn't seem to get much airtime in the mainstream media. For example, I've not seen it mentioned anywhere that our own SNP, for all they're treated like a progressive, forward-thinking party, are literally just one letter away from the BNP, the extreme right, the right-wing extremist group. But obviously you can research that one for yourself. However, I do feel that Russell Brand was wrong to suggest that we shouldn't vote. You should continue to vote for your local socialist representative in your area. The Scottish Socialist Part-Time Workers Party, or as we like to call ourselves, for short, the SSPTWP, will soon be standing in the Western Bartonshire constituency. But as the time of revolution is now, there is a political struggle going on in the world at present involving figures such as Julian Assange and Edward Snowden. Both of whom, as far as I'm concerned, are the modern day equivalent of another great leader who dared to stand up in the face of oppression, but who's sadly no longer with us. Of course, the man I'm referring to is John Lennon. Were it not for the murder of John Lennon outside his luxury apartment in cold blood, I feel that he would have went on to become the next American president, of course before dismantling the state system altogether and bringing upon us a socialist utopia as described in his hit single with Yoko Ono, Imagine. But both Julian Assange and Edward Snowden have similar revolutionary potential, and indeed it's no surprise that the US government felt it not only necessary to construct false sexual allegations against Mr. Assange, but that they also attempted to control the public's attitude towards him through popular culture. I'm sure I'm not the only one who noticed that recently the lead character in a coincidentally best-selling novel, namely 50 Shades of Grey, bears a striking resemblance to that of Assange, and I think its release was a blatant attempt to besmirch the name of Julian Assange by associating him in our collective unconscious with a perverse sexuality. And some may think this sounds like a conspiracy theory, as if that's a bad thing. But all the proof you should need that the US government were behind the release of 50 Shades of Grey lies in the fact that much of the S&M which is graphically depicted in the novel is taken straight from torture methods used by inmates on Guantanamo Bay. A much fairer assessment of the background of Julian Assange, however, is one that's not tainted with the propaganda of elites. Was in the recent feature film The Fifth Estate, released by Walt Disney Studios, which gave a balanced and much more fair view of events, in my opinion. Edward Snowden, meanwhile, is said to have fled to Russia in exile after releasing confidential documents about the United States global spying network. But this is just more capitalist propaganda. Snowden was planning to move to Russia anyway. Who wouldn't want to? But of course the bourgeois media would have you believe otherwise. And that's just typical of the media manipulation in our society. I mean, George Galloway and Tommy Sheridan are two of Britain's most formidable politicians, yet the way they are portrayed in our corporate biased press would have you believe that they are just self-obsessed, annoying prats. That's exactly why we need to spread the word online, why you need to join me and the other member of the SSP-TWP. Join us in the fight for freedom of the working class, to free ourselves from the chains of oppression and from this world where all anyone cares about is money. You can register on our webpage. There is an administration fee of £25, and you can follow me on Twitter at MarkMarksSSPTWP. But for now, Scottish Socialist Part-Time Workers of the World, good night.